Hey there, you smart cookie. You're tuning in because you want to get a real handle on things, dig deep. But you're also smart about your time and don't want to get lost in a swamp of information.
Right.
We get it.
Yeah, we do.
Today, we're going to explore a way of thinking about sex that might just surprise you, something that hints at benefits, well, way beyond the bedroom.
Exactly. We're taking a deep dive into the concepts of Karezza Sex, drawing from the Gentleman's Guide to Karezza Sex Semen Retention in Bed to Supercharge Your Life.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, the source focuses primarily on the male experience, but the underlying ideas definitely offer food for thought for, everyone in a relationship.
Absolutely. This isn't just about a new position or technique, right?
Mm.
It's presented as a whole philosophy.
That's right.
The book suggests that by intentionally shifting our focus during sex, we might be able to tap into greater energy levels, maybe sharper concentration, and a more profound connection with our partners.
Mhm.
So our goal today is to really unpack the core of this approach, figure out what makes it tick, and highlight the most interesting and thought-provoking elements for you.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. What is Karezza Sex, fundamentally?
Well, it's move away from the typical focus on orgasm in sex that's, so common.
Right.
The key difference is the deliberate choice to avoid male orgasm and ejaculation.
Right. The book places a lot of emphasis on this idea of holding on to semen. It draws inspiration from ancient Taoist beliefs, which suggest that losing semen, not just the act of orgasm itself, can deplete a man's vital energy.
Yeah, that's a central theme. They even touch on ideas like dry orgasm and reverse ejaculation, but the main thrust of the book is about steering clear of orgasm altogether.
Okay. Now, in Taoist philosophy, there's this concept of qi, or vital energy flowing through the body. The book interprets semen as like a concentrated form of this energy,
Right.
suggesting that retaining it allows this energy to be used and circulated for other benefits. Which, for those of us with a Western scientific background, it's a different framework to consider.
It is, and what's really interesting is the book's perspective on why this approach might be valuable. It offers a pretty strong critique of some common challenges men face today,
Like what?
like a feeling of being without a clear purpose, the constant pull of screens, and maybe a lack of inspiring role models, and the very real issue of pornography use.
Exactly. And Karezza Sex is presented as a potential way to address these issues. The author suggests it's for men who feel a sense of letdown after orgasm, who are tired of feeling drained or maybe overly needy, and who are looking for more focus, energy, and direction in their lives. It's framed as something for men who value love and see sex as having a deeper, more meaningful potential than just, physical release.
That's the core idea, yeah. The thinking is that by retaining sexual energy, it can be channeled into other areas of life, maybe leading to greater drive and purpose. It's also quite clear about who it's intended for, isn't it?
It is. The book specifically says it's for men who believe that sex can be something truly special and want to use that energy to achieve significant things.
Uh-huh.
It's not aimed at those who think they already know everything or who aren't interested in improving their relationships and, overall well-being.
So we've covered the what and the why, basically. Now let's get into the how. What does practicing Karezza Sex actually look like?
Okay.
The book does have sections on setting the mood and goes into detail about both foreplay and intercourse, right?
It does. And one of the first things that jumps out is the strong emphasis on connection and love.
Connection, okay.
The book argues that Karezza Sex actually enhances the positive aspects of a committed relationship. Things like really good communication, loyalty, and genuine care for each other.
Right.
The stated aim is to cultivate what they call a never-ending honeymoon phase.
Which I think many people would find appealing. And a significant part of achieving that seems to be through the power of simple touch and kissing.
Yes. The guide highlights the importance of frequent non-sexual touch throughout the day.
Just casual touch.
Yeah, seeing it as a really powerful way to communicate affection and connection and to keep a gentle level of sexual energy present.
Interesting.
And kissing. Apparently, it's pretty central to Karezza. It's seen as a key way to express love and build that deeper emotional bond.
So more than just a lead up.
Exactly. Now, when the book gets into foreplay, it's clear that this isn't just about the usual build-up to orgasm.
How so?
Karezza foreplay is described as a more mindful and controlled exchange of energy. It's about really savoring the anticipation, warming up gently and intentionally, rather than, escalating quickly towards intense physical release.
Right. Less goal-oriented, maybe.
Precisely. There's even specific guidance. For For example, when stimulating the genitals, the suggestion is to do it more slowly and with more tenderness. There's a pro tip that recommends focusing on the labia and vulva rather than direct clitoral stimulation during the initial stages.
Huh. Why is that?
The reasoning here, according to the book, is that this gentler approach is thought to build energy in a different way than more direct stimulation. It's about awakening the whole area first, perhaps.
Okay.
Then there's Karezza stroking, which sounds almost like a meditative practice for both partners.
Meditative.
Yeah, a gentle caress that the book describes as a woman's meditation on your manhood.
Wow. Okay. That's a specific phrase.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's this interesting concept here, awakening polarities.
Polarities. Like magnets.
Sort of. It's the notion of a woman becoming more connected to her vagina and a man to his penis, seeing these as channels for a kind of archetypal energy.
Archetypal energy. Okay.
However, the book also includes a caution about the balance between active, which they associate with yang or masculine energy, and passive yin or feminine energy during foreplay.
Ah, so there's a dynamic there.
Yeah, there's a concern expressed about men being too passive and an analogy drawn to the, quote, feminizing effect of masturbation.
Whoa. Okay.
Well,
That's quite a statement. What does that mean exactly in this context?
the book doesn't fully define these energetic terms, but it seems to suggest a dynamic where the man takes a more initiating role in directing the energy, but without being overly forceful or purely goal-oriented,
Leading, but not dominating in a negative way.
That seems to be the idea, and oral sex gets a mention too.
Okay.
Although it seems to be somewhat less emphasized as a method of energetic exchange compared to other forms of intimacy.
Less efficient, maybe?
Perhaps. There's even a pro tip for what they call carezza fellatio, which is described as gentle, less orgasm-focused penis worship.
Penis worship. Okay. And what about 69?
The advice is to approach it with caution, especially for beginners, mainly because of the visual stimulation and the importance of ensuring the woman's comfort.
Right. Could be too much too soon.
Potentially. And the book advises against using sex toys and pornography as part of foreplay,
Why is that?
because they're seen as potentially creating distance between partners and hindering a genuine energetic exchange. It's all about direct connection.
Makes sense if that's the goal.
Yeah.
So what about intercourse itself?
All right, Karezza intercourse. The book really emphasizes penis and vagina sex as the primary way to optimize the flow of energy between partners.
B and V is the main event then.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And that kissing we talked about, it continues during intercourse.
All the way through.
Apparently, the focus seems to be less on purely visual stimulation and more on the deep physical sensations and the feeling of connection.
Okay. Then the book introduces this idea of the dance of the seven chakras.
Ah, yes, chakras.
For those unfamiliar, chakras are described in some Eastern philosophies as energy centers within the body, right?
Correct. The book suggests that full-body contact during sex, like mouth-to-mouth, body pressed against body, can help align these energy centers.
Full contact.
They even offer tips for adjusting positions if there are height differences between partners,
Practical advice.
and point out that being physically fit can help sustain these close holds.
Right, endurance matters. What about other stimulation?
Nipple stimulation also gets a positive mention as a way to release oxytocin, often called the love hormone.
Ah, the bonding hormone.
Exactly. And one specific practice that stands out is the idea of remaining still during intercourse.
Still, like completely still.
For periods, yeah. This is presented as a powerful way to deepen the connection between the penis and vagina and to synchronize the partner's bodily rhythms. Really feel the connection.
That's different.
It is. And the book encourages sweet talk during intercourse as a way to build emotional connection and receptivity.
Talking helps.
And maintaining eye contact is also mentioned as a way to enhance intimacy.
Eye contact, okay. Makes sense. Now, you mentioned dominance earlier.
Right. Here's an interesting perspective. The book talks about dominance in the context of caressa, but it's not about forceful control.
So not BDSM-style dominance.
No, it's framed as more of a leadership role, a natural exchange of what they describe as dominant male and submissive female energy within the bedroom.
A sort of energetic polarity again.
Seems like it. They also touch on sex from behind,
Uh-huh.
noting that spooning is more in line with face-to-face contact in terms of potentially aligning those chakra energy centers compared to, say, doggy style.
Okay, so position matters for energy flow, according to this.
Yes. And the book strongly advises against fantasizing during sex.
No daydreaming.
Nope. The goal is to stay present and connected with your partner.
Total presence. Okay. What about lubrication?
Lubrication, which the book refers to as jing juice,
Gene juice, okay.
is presented as an indicator of doing Karezza right. The book suggests that natural lubrication is a sign that the energetic exchange is flowing well, and it promises more details on its significance later.
So her wetness is like a gauge.
That's the implication.
Hmm.
Then there's the topic of anal sex, referred to as the other hole.
Right. What's the take there?
While the book acknowledges its association with pornography and even mentions a Taoist reference, it advises caution,
Caution why?
emphasizing the importance of the woman's comfort and being mindful of the dopamine rush it might trigger, which could lead towards orgasm. This is contrasted with the oxytocin release from nipple stimulation.
Dopamine versus oxytocin. Interesting distinction.
Yeah. And there's a reassuring note for men. The book suggests that there's no expiration date on your boner in this context, implying that erection problems are more likely linked to overall health than to the practice of caress itself. If you're healthy, it should work.
Got it. Okay, this is crucial then. Preventing accidental orgasms. Or achieving no nut, as the book puts it.
Yes, absolutely central. They actually start the section with a quote from the Sunu Qing, an ancient Chinese text, emphasizing the preciousness of sexual energy.
Valuing the energy.
Right. The book makes it clear that unintentional orgasms can happen and are seen as counterproductive to the intended benefits of retention. Those superpowers they talk about are considered lost with ejaculation.
So avoiding it is key to the whole thing. How?
Well, the book introduces a concept called the two paths of arousal.
Two paths.
One path where pleasure leads to lust and ultimately orgasm, and another where pleasure can lead to a state of bliss and peace without necessarily culminating in orgasm.
Pleasure to lust or pleasure to bliss.
Exactly. They describe the typical stages in orgasm-focused sex as moving from pleasure to lust and then to the pre-orgasmic phase, which they quite dramatically call the war zone.
War zone, wow.
Highlighting the risk of edging that point of near orgasm. In contrast, the goal in Karezza is to remain in that zone of pleasure and ideally move towards that state of bliss.
Stay out of the war zone. Okay, makes sense. What are the techniques?
The book offers a range of techniques. It starts with being aware of the warning signs, those specific physical sensations that signal an approaching orgasm.
Knowing your body's signals.
Right. It also emphasizes knowing your personal triggers, certain actions, words, or even thoughts that might push you over the edge.
Triggers, okay.
They also advise paying attention to your natural cycles of sexual arousal, when you might be more susceptible.
Practical techniques are suggested too, right?
Yes, like consciously slowing down the pace of stimulation and focusing on deep, calming breaths.
Slow down, breathe deep. Classic advice.
It also mentions relaxing the PC muscles, those muscles in your pelvic floor.
Kegels, but relaxing them.
Exactly, relaxing them. And it even suggests that magnesium glycinate might be helpful for muscle relaxation, but that's more of a supplemental tip.
Interesting. Anything else?
Flexing other muscle groups in your body is presented as a way to redirect that building energy, like clenching your fists or thighs.
Redirect the energy flow.
And then there's this technique called the block.
The block. Sounds intense.
It sounds like a really intense, almost mental override to stop an orgasm in progress. It involves a forceful mental command, like a shout at "no" in your head.
Seriously, like yelling internally?
That's how it's described. And a strong commitment to delayed gratification, essentially viewing the approaching orgasm as the enemy to be resisted.
Wow. That requires some serious mental discipline.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The book even describes a kind of altered state of awareness, almost hypnagogic, that can be experienced, and a feeling of empowerment after successfully stopping an orgasm.
Okay. But what if it doesn't work?
Well, they acknowledge that sometimes the urge might be too strong, and in that case, it's okay to throw in the towel, reframing it as a kind of surrender to the woman's allure rather than a failure.
A graceful exit, sort of.
Sort of.
Yep.
And if an accidental orgasm does occur, the book reassures you that it's part of the learning process, not a total fail. Suggests there's a silver lining in understanding what led to it.
Learn from mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, so assuming you manage retention, what happens to that energy? This leads to Karezza transmutation.
Exactly. Channeling the sexual energy. The book defines this as allowing the sexual energy to flow within you without being released through orgasm, and instead expressing it through other avenues like feelings of triumph, creative endeavors, and expressions of love.
So redirecting the path.
That's the concept. The
Yeah.
underlying principle is that sexual energy is this raw, powerful force that is often either dissipated through frequent orgasm or simply suppressed without any conscious direction.
Wasted or ignored, basically.
Yeah.
How do you actually do the transmutation?
The book outlines a three-step process. The first step is to cultivate sex energy.
Cultivate it. How?
And this is presented as more than just a bedroom activity. It's a 247 focus on your overall lifestyle and habits.
A whole lifestyle change?
Pretty much. It starts with what they call the inner game, creating an orderly living environment, consciously limiting exposure to negative information, and crucially, abstaining from pornography and masturbation.
Okay, big ones there. Why no porn or masturbation?
The book is quite direct about this, calling pornography the opposite of sex and suggesting it contributes to men becoming, quote, passive, weak, and unattractive.
Right.
Masturbation gets similar critique, which we'll probably touch on more later.
Wow, strong words. What else for the inner game?
They also recommend practices like meditation, spending time in nature, listening to instrumental music, seeking out positive influences, and intentionally pushing beyond your comfort zones. Basically, building mental and spiritual fortitude.
Okay, building yourself up internally. What about externally?
Then there's the eat right component, making conscious food choices, avoiding excessive sugar, refined carbs, processed foods.
Standard healthy eating advice.
Mostly, yeah. Prioritizing organic fruits and vegetables, lean protein, but it also delves into the topic of phytoestrogens.
Phytoestrogens.
Yeah.
Like in soy.
Exactly. Found in foods like soy, flax seeds, dried fruits, sesame seeds, stuff like that. The book suggests they have the potential to lower testosterone levels, so it advises caution or avoidance.
Huh. Okay, that's specific. What else for cultivation?
Exercise and overall wellness are emphasized. Getting sufficient vitamins and minerals, C, D, zinc, magnesium, boron are mentioned. Building muscle mass through body weight or weights.
Physical health is key.
And finally, the first step includes avoid toxins. Being mindful of exposure to plastics, artificial fibers in clothing, it warns against polyester specifically.
No polyester. Why?
The source claims it can negatively impact sexual health, suggesting natural fibers like cotton or wool instead. Also using natural soaps, lotions, ensuring clean drinking water.
Okay, cleaning up your environment. And meds.
Right, reviewing any medications for potential sexual side effects and exploring alternatives if necessary.
So step one is a whole life overhaul. Mind, diet, exercise, environment. What's step two?
Step 2 is simply retain sex energy. This brings us back to the benefits of not ejaculating.
Just superpowers.
Well, the claimed benefits.
Right.
Increased mental clarity, improved physical appearance, a greater sense of calm and confidence, developing stronger delayed gratification.
Right.
The book uses that analogy of boiling water again, harness the steam, the energy, instead of letting it just dissipate uselessly through orgasm.
Got it. Retain the steam.
Hmm.
Step three.
Step 3 is apply sex energy. This is about consciously directing that retained energy towards your personal goals.
Okay. Putting the energy to work.
Yes. The book emphasizes the necessity of having a clear purpose, a compelling objective that truly resonates with your vision for your life.
You need a target for the energy.
Exactly. It cautions against getting sidetracked by distractions if that sense of purpose is lacking, and it stresses that success takes work, retention provides the fuel, but you still need to take action.
Energy isn't magic. You have to use it.
Right. Then the book reveals what it calls a dirty secret.
Ooh, secret.
The idea that sperm and the body have a subconscious recognition that achieving your purpose is what ultimately attracts women. It's a bit out there, linking biology to ambition directly.
Okay, interesting. Look a bit speculative.
Definitely. It even references some rather exaggerated claims from ancient texts, like the Yellow Emperor's Wisdom, about the benefits of very long-term retention sex.
Exaggerated how?
Just suggesting almost superhuman results from extreme retention frequencies, which should probably be taken with a grain of salt.
Right. So manage expectations. Does it talk about feeling, well, extra horny?
It acknowledges that a certain intensity can arise with retention, yes.
And what do you do with that?
It reiterates that the primary and healthy way to manage this is by consciously channeling that energy into the pursuit of your goals. Work harder, basically.
Use the intensity as fuel for purpose.
Okay. Now, this sounds great, but you need a partner who's on board, right?
Absolutely. And the book has a whole chapter dedicated to turning any woman into your Karezza girl.
The title sounds a bit manipulative.
It does raise an eyebrow, yeah. But the content starts by acknowledging that women, just like men, are often influenced by societal norms around orgasm. The book uses the term brainwashed.
Okay, acknowledges female conditioning too.
Right. And it emphasizes that cultivating strong masculine energy through personal achievements, self-discipline is presented as a key factor in attracting high-quality partners. So become the kind of man who attracts the right partner, rather than trying to change someone.
That seems to be the underlying message, despite the chapter title. It advises against any kind of manipulative tactics and stresses, recognizing and respecting the equal needs of both individuals in a partnership.
Good. So how do you bring up this whole Karezza thing, the talk?
Yes, the talk. The advice is to approach it in a relaxed and low-key way, bringing it up respectfully when the time feels right.
Casually, not like a lecture.
Exactly. The book suggests perhaps starting by expressing your attraction and your desire to explore a deeper level of intimacy.
Okay.
It also recommends asking open-ended questions to understand her views on sex, orgasms, the idea of spiritual sexuality, and sexual transmutation.
Gauge her perspective first.
Right, emphasizing the importance of creating a non-judgmental space for dialogue. See where she's at.
Makes sense? What about starting normal, then switching?
The book argues against that idea, initially having regular orgasm-focused sex and then trying to transition to Karezza later.
Why not?
Yeah.
Seems easier, maybe.
The reasoning given is that you might lose some of that initial honeymoon mode of the relationship around the same time you're withdrawing orgasms, which could make the transition more challenging. Better to start as you mean to go on, perhaps.
Okay, potential difficulty there. What if you slip up early on?
It addresses accidental nut-busting with a new connection, offering reassurance that it's definitely possible to practice retention even with new partners, and framing any slips as learning opportunities, not failures.
Okay, be kind to yourself. What if she knows more about this stuff?
There's a section discussing the dynamic of a woman potentially becoming the sex teacher. The book advises a degree of caution,
Caution why?
suggesting it could potentially undermine the man's leadership role in the relationship, which the book emphasizes. However, it does acknowledge the possibility of a respectful mentoring dynamic.
So, depends on the couple's dynamic. What about virgins?
For men who are virgins, the advice is honesty, but also confidence. Don't make it a particularly big deal.
Own it, but don't dwell on it. What about casual sex?
The book strongly cautions against pursuing casual sex, calling it stranger danger.
Stranger danger, seriously.
Yep. And asserting that only love purifies your sexual energy. It emphasizes the significant responsibility that comes with wielding male sexual energy.
Okay, strong stance on monogamy, or at least loving connection.
Seems so. For short-term or exploratory relationships, it highlights intention as key to the quality of the energetic exchange.
Intention matters.
Yeah.
So what are the actual steps to turn her into your Karezza girl?
Right. It lays out 5 steps. Step 1, the relationship. Focus on building a strong foundation. Love, respect, leadership. Cultivate gratitude around sex. Demonstrate affection daily, weekly. It mentions a balance of physical penetration, male energy, and emotional sucking you in, female energy.
Build the connection first. Step 2.
Step 2, foreplay. Honing those jing-juicing skills, enhancing natural lubrication through touch and talk. Being the one in a million guy who values her true sexual potential, specific touch recommendations are revisited.
Master the art of foreplay. Step 3.
Step 3, become her sex guru. Sharing knowledge about sexual energy and transmutation, embodying nonconformist masculinity and leadership. Basically, educating her gently.
Share the knowledge. Step 4.
Step 4, give it time. Patience is key for her to adjust her views on sex. Can't rush it.
Patience. Step 5.
Step 5, overcome her objections. Addressing potential issues like maybe orgasm addiction, or perhaps lower ambition with support and leadership, helping her see the benefits.
Address concerns supportively.
Okay.
Does the book say women benefit too?
It briefly touches on that, noting some anecdotal reports and the general principle of delayed gratification applying to everyone, but less focused than on the male benefits.
Okay. What if she likes orgasm sometimes?
It addresses the scenario of a partner who enjoys occasional orgasms, suggesting trying to find a way to make it work, be flexible.
Compromise.
Maybe. However, it also advises against letting a partner dictate sexual practices that go against your own convictions and emphasizes mutual growth.
Stand your ground if it's important to you.
Right. And it concludes rather optimistically that women are everywhere, and finding a Karezza-compatible partner can be rewarding.
Okay. Let's circle back to Jing juice making and keeping her wet naturally.
Right. This section revisits some earlier themes. Step 1 is the relationship. Again, love, respect, leadership are foundational.
Connection creates arousal. Makes sense.
Step 2 is foreplay, honing those skills, being attentive.
Skillful touch.
Step 3 is the secret moves. This focuses on comprehensive touch everywhere, honoring her body, kissing, sweet talk, awakening those polarities we mentioned.
The how-to specifics. Step 4.
Step 4 is the lube trap. It strongly discourages using artificial lubricant.
No lube, why not?
To preserve the natural jing juice, and, the book argues, her self-confidence about her own arousal. It emphasizes that cultivating this natural jing energy through connection and skill sets a man apart.
Okay, value the natural response. This all ties into the gentleman's approach, doesn't it?
It does. The book defines a gentleman not as someone meek or mild, but someone with high standards, focused on purpose, treating people respectfully with an abundance and leadership mindset.
Strong, purposeful, respectful.
Right. And it frames foregoing orgasm as the ultimate unplugging from unhealthy sexual norms and a gentlemanly act of leading a woman towards a supposedly more fulfilling experience.
Leading by example.
And it stresses that truly great sex is about reality and mindful connection, not chasing extreme fantasies. A woman needs to believe in the man in bed, the book says, and needs him to take the lead.
Presence over fantasy. Okay. Can Karezza be intense, though, or is it always slow?
Good question. The book addresses intense Karezza sex, clarifying that while it's often characterized as slow sex, it can also be very energetic and passionate.
So not always meditative.
No. Zeal in bed is described as conveying intensity and strong masculine energy without resorting to being rough or disrespectful.
Intensity with respect.
Exactly, contrasting this with the potential emptiness of rough, disconnected sex. It emphasizes ongoing respect for the woman's body, emotions, and energy. The bedroom is seen as a place to resolve sexual tension respectfully and display strength virility.
Passionate but connected. Okay, we touched on women and orgasms, but does the book elaborate?
It presents the viewpoint that, while maybe not as documented, women likely experience benefits from orgasm retention too, like calming anxiety, improved focus, delayed gratification.
Similar benefits proposed.
Yeah. The advice offered is for the listener to be a supportive partner, check in, allow her to experiment, but also offer guidance based on observations. Be a leader, essentially.
Communicate and observe. What about the idea that women need semen for, like, mood?
The semen and depression theory. The book tackles that directly. It dismisses the study often cited as having shoddy science, flawed methodology.
So debunks it.
Pretty much. It offers a more common sense perspective. A stable, exclusive, condom-free relationship likely contributes to well-being for both partners, regardless of semen exposure per se.
The relationship itself is key.
Right. While it acknowledges the possibility of some hormonal signaling from semen, it cautions against repeated exposure without the intention of conception.
Why caution?
It draws an analogy to artificial sweeteners. Constant signal without the real thing might have negative consequences down the line. It even mentions some emerging science about the potential for the immune system being overtaxed by excessive semen exposure.
Okay. Interesting potential downsides.
So it concludes with a common sense argument for refraining from ejaculation unless conception is actually desired.
Makes sense from that perspective. What about libido itself?
There's a note on libido, defines it broadly, linking it to overall health and testosterone. And it lists habits to avoid to support healthy libido, poor diet, inactivity, negative media, toxins, etc. Basically, the stuff covered under cultivating energy.
It all links back to general health. How should you end a Karezza session?
How a gentleman finishes Karezza sex. Encourages ending on a hopeful and sweet note, leaving her wanting more.
End on a high note, but not that high note.
Exactly. Emphasizes the man's role in guiding the conclusion, but prioritizing the woman's satisfaction and feeling of connection. Advises asking if she feels good, if she wants more, ensuring she feels cherished.
Check in and make sure she's happy. How do you feel after?
After the deed. It contrasts the feeling after orgasm sex potentially spent regretful, maybe clingy, with the energized, attracted, but not clingy feeling after Karezza sex. Getting back to other priorities feels natural.
Energized, not drained.
That's the claim. Then there's get on with it,
Yeah.
using the analogy of having extra time and choosing between depleting orgasm sex and energizing Karezza sex.
A time energy management choice.
Wow.
What about edging? Is it just fancy edging?
Good point. Karezza sex versus sexual edging. The book clearly differentiates them. It explains that edging, constantly nearing orgasm, is considered unnatural and abuses the body's systems. Skillful caressa, it argues, engages the penis without necessarily involving the testicles to the point of near ejaculation constantly. It's a different kind of control.
So less stress on the system.
That's the idea. More about sustained pleasure and connection, less about riding the edge of release.
Okay. What about, well, balls? Is it bad not to ejaculate?
Karezza Sex and your balls addresses concerns about lack of ejaculation and sperm buildup, reassures the listener that the body manages this naturally through reabsorption or nocturnal emissions, advises general hygiene.
Body handles it. And the prostate. There are myths both ways there.
Right. Karezza Sex and your prostate tackles the myth that ejaculation prevents prostate cancer and the counter myth that not ejaculating causes it.
So what's the verdict according to the source?
It summarizes scientific studies as inconclusive on ejaculation frequency and cancer risk, mentions possible links between frequent sex and overall health benefits, touches on testosterone types and risk, highlights antioxidants for prevention, and briefly mentions the PSA test controversy.
So no clear link.
The book concludes there's no study linking not ejaculating to prostate cancer, and that the overall healthy Karezza lifestyle likely improves health, potentially reducing risks anyway.
Okay, focus on overall health. Condoms. Can you do this with condoms?
Condoms and Karezza Sex explains condoms can be training wheels.
Training wheels.
Yeah, by reducing sensitivity, making retention potentially easier initially, but it advises transitioning to raw for better connection while being mindful of the increased sensitivity.
Okay, but then pregnancy risk.
Right. Emphasizes pulling out reliably to maintain retention and prevent pregnancy, mentioning cycle tracking apps as an additional layer of protection.
Pull out and track cycles. Got it. What about kink? Does that fit?
Kink and Karezza Sex defines kink broadly. Suggests that while openness is good, focus on painful or humiliating kink is likely incompatible with Karezza's loving, connected vibe.
Clashes with the energy.
Seems so. Contrasts kink's potential compartmentalization with Karezza's integration of sexual energy. Notes that transmuted wild impulses can lead to genius, though.
Okay. Polyamory.
Polyamory and Karezza Sex. Questions: the more partners is more fun logic in orgasm sex versus sacrificing deeper needs. Suggests Karezza heightens energy awareness, potentially reducing the urge for multiple partners.
Deep connection over quantity.
That's the argument. Highlights monogamy's benefit for transmuting energy towards achievement. Notes the difficulty of retaining and practicing Karezza with multiple partners.
Logistically challenging, too. Escorts.
Escorts and Karezza Sex. Briefly touches on moral health concerns, potential exploitation, reinforcing scarcity mindset, advises treating escorts respectfully if one chooses this path.
Okay. Alcohol.
Alcohol and Karezza Sex. Explains alcohol can hinder masculine energy, make avoiding orgasm harder, and isn't conducive to long-term health or spiritual growth. Best avoided for this practice.
Impairs control and energy. Menstruation.
Menstruation and Karezza Sex. Discusses the interruption, presents both options. Sex during menstruation, mentions purported benefits warnings, or abstinence.
What's the recommendation?
Leans towards abstinence, highlighting respect for her body and it being an opportunity for transmutation practice. Notes Karezza couples might find the pause easier due to not being orgasm addicted. Suggests naked makeout as an alternative for intimacy.
Respect and adapt. Okay, we mentioned porn and masturbation briefly. Does it go deeper?
Oh, yeah. Pornography and Karezza Sex. Explained how porn can subconsciously drive the urge to ejaculate, making retention difficult. Conditions the response.
Undermine the goal. And masturbation.
Masturbation and Karezza Sex. Details the source's very strong stance against it. Links it to anxiety, shame, lowered self-respect, hindering actual success.
Wow, really negative view.
Extremely. Presents the argument that it makes the penis a passive object, like a vagina, and characterizes the act of stroking cock as distinctly feminine.
Whoa. Okay, that's a very specific and controversial gendered take from the source.
Absolutely. It's one of the book's most provocative claims, framing masturbation as energetically damaging and feminizing from its perspective.
Duly noted as the source's perspective. What about wet dreams?
Wet dreams and Karezza Sex. Reassures the listener that wet dreams during retention are generally less detrimental than conscious ejaculation and will likely decrease with continued practice as the body adapts.
Natural release valve, less impactful. Clitoral stimulation again.
Clitoral stimulation and Karezza Sex. Mentions the debate again. Some see it as normal, others believe it disrupts energy balance and pushes towards orgasm too directly, compared to broader vulva stimulation.
Still debated within the Karezza context. Will this actually relieve horniness? It seems like it might build up.
Will Karezza Sex relieve my horniness? Affirms that it does, effectively, via transmutation, leads to a healthy, controlled desire rather than a desperate compulsion. Channeling it works.
Transmutation is the release. Is it fun? Sounds like a lot of work and control.
Is Karezza Sex fun? Answers with a strong yes. Highlights the endless exploration of a woman's body without the distraction of orgasm and the excitement of mastering retention and transmutation. Frames the control itself as rewarding.
The mastery is part of the fun. Is it hard, though?
Is Karezza Sex hard? Reassures that it's within reach of every man with understanding and practice. Acknowledges a learning curve, especially during orgasm detox.
Orgasm detox, okay.
Suggests temporary abstinence for those really struggling, but says it's not necessary for most. Advises slowing down and pausing if nearing orgasm. Highlights that conquering the learning curve together enhances the relationship and persistence is key.
Practice makes perfect, together. The book links this all to the procreative urge, right?
It does. The procreative urge presents the view that the sexual urge is ultimately the procreative urge wired into DNA, and confronting it can cure anxiety.
Confronting the biological imperative.
Yeah. It brings in Nietzsche's will to power, suggesting suppressing it leads to nihilism. Critiques modern messaging against procreation as damaging to the male psyche.
How so?
Suggesting that if passing on genes isn't seen as important, then the individual might feel less significant. Reiterate that becoming your best attracts women, and full flow with nature includes eventual procreation, if able.
Ties self-worth to lineage, potentially. What about overpopulation concerns?
Addresses them by arguing the human response to scarcity is innovation and creation, not shrinking. Frames humanity as fucking awesome, and the world needs more of you. Quite a strong pro-natalist stance there.
Very strong stance, yeah. And fatherhood itself.
The Karezza Daddy explains how fatherhood amplifies personal growth and provides insight into one's own development, sees it as a natural progression.
Fatherhood is growth. Okay. How does dominance fit in again without release?
Dominance without release. Frames sex as success mindset training. Orgasm releases energy and potential. The Karezza gentleman purifies energy for transmutation, highlighting sustained dominance mindset and delayed gratification as training for life.
Sex is mental training. Wow. The book seems to position this as a cure-all almost.
Karezza Sex, the cure for everything. It lists issues plaguing men, lack of confidence, anxiety, etc., and presents Karezza Sex as a simple cure based on natural harmony. Emphasizes benefits across life areas, health, relationships, income, etc. High claims. Very high claims. It's presented almost as a panacea in that section. Then there's a vision of the future, 2070.
Vision.
Paints a picture of a future where Karezza Sex is widespread, leading to positive societal changes, reduced negativity, increased positivity, and advancements like sustainable energy. Very utopian.
Okay, big picture optimism. What's the final message?
Call to action. Encourages the listener to try Karezza Sex, share the knowledge, and contribute to this envisioned better future.
Try it, share it. Okay.
So that's basically the journey the book takes you on.
So to sum up what we've explored from this guide, Karezza Sex is really about intentionally shifting the focus of intimacy away from the sole goal of orgasm.
Right.
And towards a more mindful, energy-focused connection with your partner. It emphasizes deliberate retention of sexual energy, viewing it as this powerful resource that can be cultivated and channeled beyond just the physical act, potentially leading to a range of benefits for personal well-being and relationship quality, according to the source.
This deep dive has really just given you an overview, a look into this alternative perspective on sex and its potential connection to personal power and relationship dynamics, all based on the ideas presented in this particular book.
And that leaves you with something to really think about, doesn't it? What are your current beliefs and assumptions about sex and pleasure?
Yeah, makes you question things.
Could there be more to this fundamental human experience than you've perhaps considered? Maybe it's worth contemplating the potential of consciously directing that powerful sexual energy in your own life.
Food for thought, definitely.
We encourage you to explore these concepts further and see how they resonate with your own experiences and aspirations. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.